basic information so that you know someday when they're working, whether that's a year and a half or 2 years from now, or if it's 18 years from now, you'll understand where to strive, what would be your goal, and how do you help achieve that. Okay, so the next slide, I've kind of gone over. Okay, that's that's what the objectives are. We're going to eliminate the fear. I'm going to explain the 2 programs, how to qualify, how to apply, and then some information about work incentives, because everybody hears the story, oh, they can't do any work or else they're going to lose everything. And that's not true. And so we need to break that information down into what's true so you can help make an informed choice for your child. Next. There are 2 kinds of disability benefits that are housed under Social Security Administration. The first one is Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI. This is for somebody who has worked, paid in Social Security taxes into Social Security, and for that, they purchase insurance so that if something happens and they lose their job, the Social Security benefit will reimburse some of that wage loss that occurred due to the disability. Now, you can have a minor child if you're on retirement benefits or disability benefits, or one of the working parents has passed and there are survivors. You can receive under age 18 or up to 19 if you're still in high school, regardless of whether or not you have a disability. So I have some parents who have a child who's receiving a minor child benefit. They get the letter saying, hey, they're getting ready to turn 18. You need to let us know if they're still in school so we can continue the benefits for a little longer, or if they have a disability to apply. So it would be important to do both. As a disabled adult child, the reason you'd want to file that disability application when they're getting ready to turn 18 is on the Social Security side, they could continue that disability dependent benefit as a disabled adult child, as long as their disability occurred prior to age 22. So even if you're 45 or they're 45, when you file for retirement, just keep in mind, if they've never been able to substantially work on their own Social Security record to where they could draw benefits on their own Social Security record, they could very possibly draw as a disabled adult child on your record. SSI is a disability program based on disability and financial need. You could have a child, now when the child is under 18, mom and dad's income and assets count. Once they turn 18, that's no longer the case. And then they're eligible just based on what their own income and assets are. Oftentimes we'll find where you have a young child, they are fully disabled, there's not a question about that, but Social Security won't even make the medical decision simply because mom and dad have too much income. And that does happen. Next slide. So as I was mentioning earlier, so on the SSDI side, like I said, they can receive benefits on the parent's record and can continue to draw up to age 19 if they're still in high school, even if whether or not they have a disability because of being a student. Next one.
Hey, there was a question. If parents are divorced, can the adult disabled person draw on either parent or physical residence income?
Either parent, whichever one would be higher.
Does that answer your question, Amy? Sorry, I can't see you. I don't know where you are. Okay.
Yes, it could be either parent. Physical custody has nothing to do with it as long as it's their child. Now, it's different if it's a stepchild, because then they have to prove that they've been providing over 1/2 of that stepchild's support. But for a regular natural born child or legally established parent of a child through paternity, then they could draw whether or not they are the custodial parent or not.
Okay, great. Thank you. That answered her question.
Perfect. Next slide. So the disability benefit on a parent's record, they could file on their own record due to disability at age 18 if they have, maybe they've worked some summer jobs during the summers, in between school years. Excuse me. It doesn't take a lot to have enough quarters to be covered during that period of time. So sometimes they can file on their own and draw some benefits on their own Social Security record. If a parent was going to lose their benefit because the youngest child was getting ready to turn 16 and they're no longer able for child and care benefits, but the parent is staying home to take care of this child with a disability and are not able to go to work or work full time, they could see about extending that benefit, and then they could file on their parent's record if they have a disability happen prior to age 22. I'm finished with that slide, and I think I saw there was another question.
Yeah. Jan asked if a child with a disability has been receiving SS benefits since she was very young, does she have to reapply when she's out of high school, or is that for life?
She will have to reapply when she's turning 18. The disability criteria, is different. That's why on the Social Security side, the SSDI side, really up to age 18, they're eligible for that dependent benefit, whether they have a disability or not. On the SSI side, if they're just drawing SSI disability, the criteria for SSI disability is a lot different than the adult criteria for disability. It would be pretty difficult to try to determine if a 3-year-old has the ability to work at a substantial level. And so instead, what they do is they look, well, compared to another 3-year-old, do they have a condition or disability that significantly puts them behind what would be standard for somebody of the same age group? So if the child is on SSI and has been receiving all along under SSI disability, sometime shortly after the 18th birthday, Social Security will be in touch with whoever's in charge of their benefits to see about updating the medical information to confirm that that disability meets the adult standard. Okay. We can go quickly to the next 2 slides because the other one is just a how can we, oh, I've already done that. How do we get started? Okay. Next slide. For Social Security disability, whether you are filing at age 18 to continue a benefit on a parent's record, or maybe they were 20 when you happened to hit retirement age or started drawing disability benefits, you need to file that application. For SSI, both the childhood disability and the adult disability, you need an application. And so the first thing you do is you can make an appointment to file for that application. the number 800 SSA 1213. They're open from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, Monday through Friday. And you can call them, give them your child's name and social security number, answer some basic information like date of birth, where they were born, mom's maiden name, that kind of stuff. And they'll set up an appointment for you to file. You can also, if the child is 18, so this wouldn't work if one of you out there thinks your income is low enough to be eligible and you want to file for your child who's 3 or 4, you're not going to be able to do that application online right now. It's coming, but it's not right now. So you would just have to call Social Security and make an appointment to do that. However, if you're 18, whether it's Social Security or SSI, you could file that disability application online by going to socialsecurity.gov. You literally click on the disability link, click on apply, and start filling in the blank. Now, I will warn you, it takes some time to do it, so be prepared. Next slide. No, it's back.
Is that the wrong slide?
The one before that. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So be prepared. Sometimes I'm hired by parents to file their child's disability application for them. And whether you do it through myself, you do it on your own through Social Security's website, or you're doing it through an appointment with Social Security, there's some things you have to have. Medical records and school records. This does not mean that you need to go to every doctor, every hospital, and every school and get the stacks of medical evidence. What it does mean, however, is you're going to have the name, address, telephone number, and at least approximate dates of service for any medical source that has treated your child. This is very important to make this list comprehensive. I have a lot of parents who assume that one disability, because of its name, is going to approve that child, so they don't add the fact that they also have a seizure disorder and that they have anxiety disorders, or they broke their back when they were 14 in a horseback riding accident and they can't lift more than 10 pounds. I want everything in there. You just want to bombard Social Security with medical sources. If the child went to Children's Hospital and was told they needed speech and recreational therapy, if they had it done to Children's, that's great. You can list it under Children's. But in any other avenue, you're going to want to list that. So I'll have some that'll get some services for a while from the DD board under Help Me Grow. And then maybe they have a private therapist, and then that therapist moved on, so they moved them to another therapist. All of those are people that they'll want their names, their address, their phone number, approximately when they treated them, so the Social Security can get all of that information. Medications list, have handy, either line up the prescription bottles on your desk, or type them out and list them. Just have them available along with their spellings. Sometimes they're 24 letters with only 4 of them vowels. So having that spelling and what it's for is important. If they've had any work history, even if it was a 6-week job coaching test at Goodwill to see whether or not they could handle a job in mainstream, we want to list that. And then you'll notice in the bottom, completely separated, there's not a mistake, that it is separated from the rest of them, and it is all in caps. Complete the remark section. After you have gone through an hour and a half or an hour, sometimes longer, sometimes a little less, depending on how many medical treatment sources you have. After you've gotten finished keying all that information, you're going to come to this page that says remarks. Now, if you let Social Security play data transcriber for you, they're going to, after the hour and a half, they're going to get to that question and they're going to say, is there anything else you want us to know? When I worked at the agency, I would say 99 people out of 100 just said no, there's nothing else. Because at that point, you're tired. You have been hogtied by this agency to either sit in front of them or sit on the phone with them to answer all these questions. And all you can think of is, I just want this to end. However, that remark section might be the most important question on that disability report form. And here's why. They will obtain the medical evidence from all of the doctors. They're going to look at all of the treatment sources and what the doctor said, what the IQ was, what their interactions were, all of that. But there are things, let's be honest, that sometimes our children struggle with in the workforce that are not going to show up anywhere in a medical report. And it may be the key piece to help them determine whether or not your child is going to be able to work at a substantial level, which is $1,310 a month, on a consistent basis. So an example of that, I pick on my 31-year-old son quite often. He's on the autism spectrum and he has some disabled, he has a seizure disorder and some low-level anxiety-related disorder. So he was working this job at Walmart, and he's a very concrete thinker. My job is to go get all of the carts that are in the driveway or the parking lot and bring them and put them back in line up by the store. He knew that was his job, and he was good at doing that. But he got very upset when he would get all of them in and then look out at the parking lot and there were a whole bunch more out in the parking lot again. Because to him, it was concrete. I go get the carts and I bring them back. If I leave carts out there, I'm going to be in trouble. He couldn't understand that the abstract, that as he was bringing carts in, people were shopping at one of the busiest Walmarts in the area, and they were taking carts back out. They finally had to find a mark on the wall and say, as long as you've kept them full to this level, you're fine. Onto this line, you're okay. Because he would get so upset that he'd no more bring them all in, that there were some out there. He was afraid he'd be in trouble. His anxiety would throw him into a seizure. And that was not very good. I got caught up there more than once for a seizure, and that ended up being the reason he was afraid he'd be in trouble. I guarantee you that does not show up in any medical record anywhere, but it sure as heck is important if you are trying to make a decision about that child. So explain to them how their interpersonal skills, the reading facial cues or visual cues, not respecting or not having the ability to respect personal space. My son loves to hug everybody, and most people are good with that. Sometimes people aren't. So it's a constant thing to work on, but that's something that they would need to know. I have seen cases that were denied at the initial level that were approved at the first level of appeal. And the only thing that changed was that the parents completed the remarks section. So that's very, very important. Okay, I think I saw some questions in there. If we want to go to those real quick before I hit work incentives real fast.
Yep, I got a question. It says, can you save and come back to the form, or do you need to complete it all at one time?
If you do it online, you can save it. You'll be given a re-entry number And you can, okay, I'm sorry, somebody distracted me there for a minute. You can save it with a reentry number and go back. And I think they give you like 3 or 4 days window that you can go in. So that is a nice thing about doing it online. If you find that you're overwhelmed or it's like, oh crap, I forgot to get all the stuff about his special education. You can save everything, go get a cup of coffee, take a nap, go eat dinner, then come back to it the next day and finish it up. If you let them do the appointment with you via the telephone, you are hostage with them until that application is finished. Next question.
No, I think that was it. Oh, wait, never mind. Hold on. By school records, are we talking IEP and ETR or something else?
Usually that's it. Unless a teacher, sometimes they'll send a form out to the teacher for the teacher to physically complete a form. But usually it's the ETR and the IEP. As long as you have the name, address, and phone number of the school, they will contact the school to get that ETR and the IEP. I will say sometimes some schools are not really good at responding during the summer. So if that's a problem and you happen to have a copy of it, you can send that into your local Social Security office and they can make that copy of part of the electronic record. Now, any other questions before I touch on something else and then we'll move on?
No, that's all I see right now. Oh, hold on. So we don't need PDFs to send, or should we?
It's not required. Again, if you have medical evidence and you want to send a copy of that to Social Security, you can. But it's not mandatory as long as Social Security knows where to go to get in touch with that medical source. Now, when you do it with them over the telephone, like you set up an appointment, when you set up the appointment and you're going to let Social Security fill it all in, they're going to do all the different parts of the application with you all at one time. If you do it online, keep in mind that Social Security, that the application online is a Social Security application only. Social Security and SSI share the disability report form. It's the same form for both programs. So if you go in and apply for Social Security disability, it's going to let you get to that electronic form so you can fill it out and not have to worry about, I mean, you can take your time and you can do it over a couple of days and re-enter and that kind of thing. But understand that if you're filing for SSI, you would then have to you will be recontacted by Social Security, who will spend about 5 or 10 minutes going over the SSI only section of the application because that part is not online.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh, that's okay. Nope, that's fine. You can go to the next screen.
Wait, I did have another question popped up. It says,
Okay.
is the medical, school records, medication, and work history what we need during the appointment to file for the application?
Yes. You know, name, address, phone number of pediatrician, name, address, and phone number of Children's Hospital. And if they saw somebody at Children's and it was all at Burnett, even if they saw 15 different doctors and 12 different groups there, you can list it all under Children's Hospital, Burnett Avenue. But if they also went to Liberty Township for some tests, you'll have to list that one separately to look up the address and phone number for the Liberty Township one. There's about 6 or 7 different Children's in our geographic area. And I have parents who live in northern part of Cincinnati that have hit 3 or 4 of them. So, but the name, address, telephone number, and approximately when they went. Now you don't have to have, oh, they had an appointment June 2nd, 2019, you could just say when they were 18 or summer of 2018 or whatever, just so they can kind of have some information that if the doctor says, well, I'm having trouble finding this record, maybe they only have the last 2 years in the office and they have everything else stored someplace else. So it just gives the doctors an idea of, number one, how old they were when they had the treatment done, and number two, a guidance for them so that they can get those medical reports. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions at all about the application process? Because I think that's the one that most of you are going to be more focused on right now.
Says, how far back do we go for medical specialists? My daughter is almost 18 and she's seen specialists since she was born, and we have moved many times.
As many of them as you can go, as far back as you can go. Some children have a very clear-cut disability, where if you have the initial pediatrician and the most recent 4 or 5 years of medical evidence, you would be fine. When I help a parent file that application, I ask them to give me everything, even going back. That's part of their homework, because again, you never know when Dr. A isn't going to respond because he's too busy. But Dr. B responded, so we're good because he was able to collaborate or confirm what the disability was. Since you never know what doctor's office is going to be good at returning things and which doctor is not, I always give them everything, and then it's up to them to decide how far back they want to go. Now, especially if they're going to file as a disabled adult child, you want to make sure that you have medical evidence prior to them hitting age 22. I did have an individual who was very healthy and had a diagnosis of Down syndrome. She was 35 or 36 when she came into the agency to, her father had filed for retirement benefits. But she hadn't been to a doctor in over 10 years because she hadn't been sick. And her pediatrician that could have confirmed that she had Down syndrome had long since died or retired and moved on. It was a challenge finding someplace that could confirm what we all knew. And even though, so, I mean, she was eventually approved, but it took some doing because we had a challenge getting that medical evidence. So if you have a pediatrician that's retiring or moving on, and you want to make sure that you have records for prior to age 22 to establish it, that might be one where you ask the doctor if you can have a copy of that file before they retire, so that you can make sure that you have it in the event that you need it down the road. Anything else?
That's all I see.
Okay, let's move on. I'm just going to quickly go through these. We're going to kind of zip through these. This is more important for our transition age. You know, your 16, 17, 18-year-olds, or those that are going to defer diploma and stay into the school system until they're 22. This is how much they can work on different programs and still draw their benefits. Excuse me. So while I'm not going to spend an inordinate amount of time, I do want to go over it with you because it kind of does give you some examples or some idea of how much you can, you know, when they say, oh, they can't work, or how much can they work without messing things up. This gives you a general idea that it's probably a little more liberal than you would think. The Social Security disability side, because they have worked and paid into the system to get that benefit back out, there's a lot more latitude of what they can and cannot do without it impacting their check. The first 9 months of any and all work, they can make as much as they want. They make over $940. It counts as a trial work period month. They have 9 of those. They could be 9 in a row. They can be 2 here and 2 there and 3 down the road. They just have to be within a 5-year window. After that is over, there's an extended period where if their earnings go over the $1,310 a month, they would suspend for that month, but then if the following month they were below, they could get that money back again. Medicare, if you're on Social Security disability benefits, after 2 years, you get Medicare, just like the Medicare that others get when they're 65. So that could be very important. An expedited reinstatement is just something that if you've used up to 9 months, you've used up to 36 months, you're making so much, your cash benefit goes to 0, but something happens within 5 more years and you can't work anymore because of the disability, you can get the benefits reinstated while they make a new medical decision. Let's look at the SSI side. SSI is a program based on financial need. So unfortunately, there's no big trial work period. There's no, gee, you can make up to $1,310 and still draw your benefit. It's a math formula. The first $20 of any income and the first $65 of wages are not counted. Half of anything over that would be subtracted from the SSI. However, in the event that they make so much money that that cash benefit for SSI goes to 0, unless they're making well over $36,000 a month, or a year, they would be eligible to keep the Medicaid that comes automatically with the SSI under the 1619B provisions. And even beyond that, there are ways to, if they're working, to get Medicaid, even beyond the fact that they're making over $36,000. So again, people who think they're going to lose everything, they may lose some of the cash benefit, excuse me, but they will not lose their Medicaid. Next slide. There are special situations on the Social Security side. Some of them, the impairment-related work expenses count on either side, but if they need special transportation to get to and from work because of their disability, and they have to pay it out of pocket, if they have any out-of-pocket medical expenses related to their medical condition, they need to try to keep under control so that they can go to work. Those two can be subtracted off of their gross wages, so we don't count, or Social Security won't count the entire thing, okay? Move on. In the event that your child is statutorily blind, that's 2,200 best corrected, best I. Instead of that $1,310 a month, they can earn up to $2,190 a month. And on the SSI side, the math formula is a little different. You subtract off those expenses at a different point in the math formula so that they end up being able to keep more of their check. Next one. Now I want to talk about one of my favorite SSI work incentives. This is called the Student Earned Income Exclusion. It's very easy to tell a student as they're trying to transition from high school into adulthood, oh, you're going to get a job and everything's going to be great, but they need training, they need assistance, they need help, they may need additional education. to encourage students with disabilities to try working. If you're under 22, regularly attending school, and Project Search and Career X and all of those programs count toward that regular attending school criteria. They, instead of just the -20, -65 divided by 2, they can actually make up to $1,930 a month, up to $7,700, $7,770 a year, and still draw their full SSI check. This is an excellent way to maximize the supports that you can have for your child when they get to that transition age. Deferring diploma, let them walk with their class, but they can defer the diploma and stay in school to take care, to obtain additional training at either their local career center or one of the other special programs like Project Life, Project Search, Career X, that can help them with that. And if some of that includes some work that they get paid for, they can keep that and still not have that SSI check go down. And that way they see that benefit of working. Okay.
I got 2 people asked how far ahead of their child's 18th birthday can they apply?
The first day of the month following the month they turn 18. So if they turned 18 May 11th, June 1st is when they want to file. Because they have to be 18 for the whole month. Otherwise, the parent's income counts. Okay. Next one. For those young adults who were on SSI when they turn 18, that are going to have that medical review to determine whether or not they meet the adult standard. There is a provision that if they are in school and if they have an IEP that has a specific career goal which seems reasonable based on or viable depending on their disability, even if Social Security says that they do not meet the adult criteria, they may still be able to continue their benefit until they exit the school system with that on that IEP, because Social Security does not want to rip the rug out underneath from somebody who is trying to get educated or retrained and go to work. And that's called VR Section 301. You just need to make sure that when they hit 18 and you get called in for that review, to mention that they're operating in the school under an IEP and the name and address of the school. Next slide. This is another one, past plan for achieving self-support. It's just a plan that allows you to set aside income or assets that would not allow you to be eligible to draw a full SSI check, and allows you to instead set that money aside for a specific vocational goal so that you can continue to live while you are paying for that vocational goal. So maybe you're going to take some training classes to become certified in auto mechanics, and you're going to work as a part-time pizza delivery person for a while to save up the money for the gas to get to and from school and the tools and things like that. Instead of lowering your SSI because you're working that part-time pizza job, they could set aside that money instead to pay for that gas or those tools or the class or whatever, and keep your SSI at the full rate, so that you can get that training and be better with that. Okay.
Hold on, it looks like somebody said, so after the SSDI 3-year work period, The $13.10 per month remains constant for the over 25-year-old. True, or is there other variables?
The 1310 is what the amount is for 2021. That amount goes up every year based on the Consumer Price Index. Those amounts are reported by Social Security in the fall of every year. Last year, it wasn't that much. It was $12.60 per month. So that goes up a little bit every year. But as long as they keep their earnings under the 1310, they would be able to continue the SSDI benefit. Now again, SSI is different. It's minus $20 minus 65, divide the balance by 2. So they don't get to keep everything, but they would still get to keep their Medicaid though. And on the SSDI side, they would get to keep their Medicare. Okay.
Sorry.
No.
How do we adjust for amounts paid for transportation?
If the person has, okay, so 2 different rules, 2 different programs. On the Social Security side, the SSDI side, Social Security doesn't even worry about it unless the person is making over $1,310. But say they're making $1,500 a month gross, and they have $250 a month in out-of-pocket transportation expenses. They would subtract that $250 off of the $1,500 and then say, oh, well, they only made $1,250. That's under $1,310. They can keep their check. On the SSI side, it's handled a little differently. It's minus 20, minus 65, but then you would also minus the $250 you paid in transportation expenses and divide by 2, and then subtract it off to find out how much is accountable for the SSI, how much the check will go down. So basically half of anything that you pay out in out-of-pocket expenses is added back into your SSI check. So each program handles it a little differently. Now, at the very end of the presentation, I'm going to give you some place where you can go to get some cheat sheets with this, and you can have those in front of you.
Awesome.
I'm sorry?
I think that's good. I don't see anything else right now.
Okay, so let's click a couple. Keep going. Okay, so I'm going to be wrapping up here. I just have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that I give you a couple of other resources. These are all partners who can help you in transition. I know some of you have littles, and so you may not need transition services now, but I want you to be aware that they're out there, and so that you can get them set up. Parents, teachers, vocational experts, Social Security, if you have questions about what kind of benefit they're receiving or what their earnings capacity is, there are ways to find out how much they're allowed to make. Now understand, Social Security only knows Social Security and SSI and Medicare rules. They may be able to answer a little bit about Medicaid, but not a whole lot. You would have to contact your local Department of Job and Family Services for that. So it's really important to contact each agency involved. If you are working with the State Vocational Rehabilitation Services, it's now called OOD, Opportunity for Ohioans with Disabilities. They can actually connect you with a provider, I'm one of them, who would actually identify what kind of benefits your child is receiving and advise what will happen, if anything, to those benefits if they return to work. And that's called a benefit analysis. And that really does help give you that confidence ahead of time on what to do, how to report. If you don't have a stable account where you can save money aside so it doesn't impact Medicaid benefits, That becomes part of the benefit analysis as well, to explain the benefits of that. But they can help you with that. If you have trouble with the state VR or with an employer, you can go onto Social Security's website. There are protection advocacy groups, PABS groups. Disability Rights of Ohio is the one for Ohio. And they can give you some counseling or advice on, hey, my daughter's school is not following their IEP. What can I do about it? Or, gee, the state VR counselor hasn't been returning my calls. What can I do to get a new counselor? Whatever the situation is, they can walk you through that, and their services are paid for through Social Security grants and other grants and funding through the state. So they should be at no cost to you. Next slide.
Quick question. Two things what do you know about supports available for non-English speaking families?
The state vocational rehabilitation agencies do have language interpreters for those where English is a second language. If they call Social Security and they have a challenge with speaking English, Social Security can set it up for that appointment to have an interpreter available to help them, whether it's a different language or American Sign Language. So those things can be accommodated.
Okay. And then there was another question. When you retire and they are going to retire on your record, does it matter how long it's been since you've received your SS credit? Example, last time you paid into the SS system was 15 years ago.
For retirement benefits, the answer is no. As long as you have your 40 quarters, which is equal to 10 years worth of work, it really doesn't matter where those 10 years fall. Now they're going to average your highest 35 years of work. So if you've only had 20 years of work, you're going to have 10 years of zeros averaged in for the benefit amount. But there's no requirement that any of the time be current. The current is for disability only, where not only do you have to have the 40 quarters, unless you're younger, where you haven't had the time to earn 40 quarters, you have to have 40 quarters, but half of them have to have been within the last 10 years. You have to have worked 5 out of the last 10 years. So it's possible that you have enough quarters for regular retirement, but no current quarters to get disability benefits. I see that a lot in people who leave a job and then go work for a city, state, or local government, or a police department. And so now they're covered under non-SSA wages, but it doesn't matter for retirement, it'll still be there.
Okay.
Okay. This is the end. I guess if you go to the last page, I think my contact information is on there. GetSSAHelp.com. On that website, I will apologize, the student earned income exclusion fact sheet is a couple years old, but you'll get the sense from the math. I needed to redo it as of January, and I've had some significant health problems recently, and so getting everything up to the website just hasn't been my priority. But at GetSSAHelp.com, you can click on free forms. There is a general work incentives where all the SSDI work incentives are on one page and all the SSI work incentives are on another page. So you can pay attention to just which page focuses on the kind of benefit that you or your child is receiving. There's also some additional worksheets showing you an example of that student earned income exclusion. I actually took somebody who worked 32 hours during the summer and then work 16 to 20 hours during the school year, and showed how they lost very, very little of their SSI and maintained their entire Medicaid eligibility because they were under 22 and they were a student. So those are free forms. It doesn't cost you anything to get to them. In the event that you have a question that you think about tomorrow morning, you can always email me again, ssahelp@gmail.com, and I will respond to you as best as I can, as quickly as I can, to help get that answer for you.
There was one follow-up to the retirement question. She said, is it better to use the first parent to retire record, even if it's a smaller record, or wait until the younger parent who has 35 years in to retire?
You always want to take what they're eligible on today. So it could be that they apply for and receive benefits on one record, one parent's record, and then 5 years or 10 years later, when the other parent retires, they can look to see about transferring them over to that record instead of that record is more advantageous to them. And then they'll also be looking to recalculate if they do have part-time work or earnings and they're paying the taxes in, they may reach a point where they're eligible for benefits on their own Social Security record. So, but the Social Security will help you navigate which one is financially better.
Another follow-up on that. This person said, I'm in the teacher pension system and can't get full SS benefits when I retire. How will this impact my daughter's ability to collect benefits?
Whenever Social Security says you are eligible for a full retirement age, after they've adjusted it for the fact that you have your STRS, your daughter would be eligible for up to 50% of whatever that amount is. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're looking to think about retirement. A lot of financial planners that I have dealt with think about the worker themselves and how much more money they can wait or make if they wait till they're 70, or if they take it to full retirement age instead of at age 65 or at 62. Excuse me, but if you have a child whose disability occurred prior to age 22, it may be a consideration. They're entitled to up to 50% of whatever your full retirement age amount is. And theirs isn't reduced for taking it early, even if yours is. And so, I had a parent who was pretty convinced that he wasn't going to take his benefit at 66. He was going to wait till he was 70 to get that extra 8% a year delayed retirement credit. But he was a very high wage earner, and he was going to be blowing off $1,600 a month in dependent benefits for his son. And fortunately, somebody at the Cincinnati Hamilton County Board of DD Services questioned that and contacted me, and we confirmed that that is the case. That makes a huge difference. You might be getting 8% more a year, but your child is getting nothing, or they're living on the small SSI instead of much larger SSDI. And so it's something where you have to play with those numbers to figure out what's best for you and your family. Anything else?
Couple thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I
you.
appreciate everybody's time. I know this is late at night for all of you, and I appreciate you sitting and listening to me. But again, if you have any other questions that come up, please feel free to drop me a line, and I'll be more than glad to answer your questions for you.
Thank you, Debbie, very much. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any more questions right now. And you guys can always reach out to me too if you need, I'm happy to get in contact with Debbie as well. She's been a big help. So we're glad that you guys can make it tonight. And I will share this recording with everybody in the PowerPoint probably sometime in the next couple days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming. I hope you guys have a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.